The unexpected arrival. It was a cold evening when David returned home after a long, exhausting day. The city streets were quiet, and the streetlights flickered like tiny stars in the dark. His feet ached, and he couldn't wait to sink into the comfort of his couch. The thought of his warm bed made him pick up the pace, ready to forget about the world for a few hours. As he stepped inside his apartment, the familiar scent of his worn-out sofa and the faint smell of leftover pizza greeted him. Everything felt normal, just like any other day. But as David dropped his bag by the door and turned to kick off his shoes, something unusual caught his eye. Sitting at the foot of his bed was a small, furry creature. It was curled up tightly, its eyes wide and glowing softly in the dim light. At first, David thought it was just his mind playing tricks after a tiring day. Maybe a stray cat or some other animal wandered into his apartment somehow. But as he took a step closer, he froze. The creature didn't look like anything he'd ever seen. Its fur was a deep mix of colors, almost shimmering in the soft glow from the streetlight outside. The body was small but muscular, with sharp claws, and a sleek, almost otherworldly shape. But what struck David the most were its eyes. They weren't like those of any animal he'd seen before. They were intelligent, deep and alert, like it was watching him, understanding him. David rubbed his eyes, wondering if his exhaustion was getting the best of him. "Must be a stray," he mumbled, trying to shake off the feeling that something was off. He walked over slowly, crouching down to get a better look. The creature didn't move. It just stayed there, staring at him, its chest rising and falling with each breath. A strange sense of calm washed over David as he sat down on the edge of the bed. "You're not supposed to be here," he whispered, half to himself, half to the animal. He felt a sudden impulse to reach out and pet it, to see if it would respond like any regular pet would. Slowly he extended his hand, careful not to scare The creature didn't flinch, and as his fingers brushed against its fur, David felt a strange electric charge run through him. Like a jolt of energy. David pulled his hand back quickly, his heart racing. What was that? It was like the animal reacted. He tried to convince himself it was nothing, just his imagination running wild after a tiring day. Maybe the animal was sick or injured and had wandered in seeking shelter. He couldn't help but feel a pull towards it, a sense of responsibility to help. David stood up and walked to his kitchen, grabbing some leftover chicken from the fridge. "I'll feed you, I guess," he muttered. When he returned, the animal was still in the same spot. Its eyes followed him, but it didn't move. He set the plate down in front of it, trying to coax it into eating. For a moment, nothing happened. David sighed, ready to leave it be for the night. But then something changed. The creature sniffed the air, and without hesitation, it moved towards the food. Slowly but surely, it began to eat, its sharp teeth tearing into the chicken with surprising ease. David watched, captivated by the creature's grace. He felt like he was witnessing something incredible, something that didn't belong in the world he knew. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden noise, a soft, low growl. The creature was still eating, but its body was tense, as if it was alert to something. David froze, unsure of what to do next. His instincts screamed at him to back away, but something in the creature's movements made him hesitate. He didn't want to frighten it, but the unease was growing. The growl stopped as quickly as it started, but David couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about this animal. He turned to leave, but the creature's eyes locked onto his, holding his gaze. There was something almost human about them. For a split second, David felt as if it understood him, like it was trying to tell him something that went beyond the surface. But that was impossible, right? As he walked to his room, he couldn't help but glance over his shoulder at the strange creature still sitting at the foot of his bed. He was sure that, like any animal, it would settle down and fall asleep. But as the seconds ticked by, David felt an odd sensation. a sense of anticipation building in the air. He sat on his couch, trying to shake off the growing unease. There was no reason for him to feel this way. It was just an animal, a lost pet, that had somehow found its way into his home. But as he sat there, staring at the creature out of the corner of his eye, he couldn't help but wonder if there was more to it than he realized. What was it really? And why did it feel like this encounter was the beginning of something he couldn't yet understand? Little did David know, this strange animal was not what it appeared to be. And soon, he would find himself pulled into a world of secrets, mysteries, and a truth far beyond his comprehension. A mysterious connection. The next morning, David woke up with a strange feeling in his chest, something that felt like a weight he couldn't shake off. He had hardly slept, his mind racing with thoughts of the creature that had appeared in his apartment. At first, he dismissed it as just a weird, unsettling dream, but as he looked toward the foot of his bed, he saw the creature still there, curled up in the same spot. It was almost like nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. The animal was no longer just a curiosity. It had become something more, something that lingered in the back of David's mind, gnawing at him. As he shuffled to the kitchen to make coffee, he heard a faint sound behind him, a soft, gentle breath, like someone was quietly watching him. He turned, expecting to see the creature still lying there, but instead, it was standing up, watching him with those same deep, intelligent eyes. David froze, his heart skipping a beat. The creature was closer, now standing just a few feet away from him, its head cocked to one side, as if studying him. Double quotes, why? Why are you staring at me like that? David muttered, trying to brush off the odd sensation that had crept over him. He rubbed his eyes, certain that he was just imagining things, but when he looked again, the creature's gaze was unwavering. It was as if it was waiting for something from him. David couldn't explain it, but there was something oddly familiar about those eyes, something that made him feel connected. He stepped back, uncertain whether to approach or keep his distance. The animal seemed perfectly calm, yet there was an undeniable tension in the air. It was as if it was trying to communicate, but David couldn't understand it. His mind raced. Was he overthinking this? Was he just seeing things because of his exhaustion? David tried to distract himself, focusing on his morning routine. He poured himself a cup of coffee, trying to ignore the creature. But as he sipped, he couldn't help but glance back at it, and that was when it happened. The creature blinked slowly, almost like a deliberate motion, and then it took a small step forward, closing the distance between them. David's heart thudded in his chest as he watched it move closer, its golden eyes never leaving his. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly, even though he couldn't explain why he felt so nervous. The animal didn't make a sound, but somehow, David could feel its presence more than ever, almost like it was inside his mind, watching his every thought. And then, unexpectedly, the creature did something that completely threw David off guard. It tilted its head back, opening its mouth, and spoke, its voice clear, calm, and in perfect English. "I'm not what I seem," the creature said softly, its words hanging in the air. David's heart stopped. He nearly dropped his cup of coffee as he stared at the creature, unable to comprehend what he had just heard. You can talk?" he stammered, still frozen in disbelief. The creature didn't respond at first, simply watching him with those mesmerizing eyes. "I'm not a pet," the creature continued, its voice steady. "I've been sent here stranded. I need your help." David's mind raced, struggling to keep up with the situation. "Help? What do you mean? You're not just some animal?" His voice was shaky, almost unsure if he was awake or still trapped in some kind of dream. The creature slowly stepped closer, its body shifting slightly as it took on a more upright posture. Its shape was still odd, but something about its presence felt different now, more human-like. "I'm an alien," it confessed. "My ship crashed here. I've been hiding, watching, trying to find a way back home." David blinked, still trying to process the words that had just been spoken to him. Alien? It didn't seem real. How could it be real? But as he looked at the creature standing before him, its eyes holding his in a way that felt almost intimate, he couldn't deny the growing sense of connection between them. For the first time, David noticed the strange aura around the creature. There was something about it, an energy, a pull that he couldn't explain. Yet it felt oddly comforting. "I don't understand," David murmured, his voice cracking. "Why are you here? Why me?" The creature seemed to hesitate for a moment, then took another step forward. "You were chosen," it said quietly. "I don't know why, but I feel a connection with you. You are the only one who can help me." David felt his mind spinning, his thoughts clashing with his disbelief. "Chosen? But I'm just a normal guy," he protested, stepping back. I'm not equipped for this kind of thing. "I can't help you." But the creature didn't back away. Instead, it stepped closer, its presence almost magnetic. "You're more than you think," it said. "You've already helped me without knowing it. I need your trust. I need you to believe me." David stood there, frozen, his heart pounding. What could he do? What was he supposed to do? He'd been just a regular guy living a normal life now. He was face to face with an alien. A strange, powerful creature who needed his help, and who somehow seemed to know him in ways he couldn't understand. The tension between them thickened. But as the seconds ticked by, something shifted inside David. There was no going back now. The truth was standing right in front of him, and whatever happened next would change his life forever. The first words David sat down on the couch, his head spinning. The creature, no, the alien was real. Everything he thought he knew about his world seemed to be crumbling, piece by piece. He ran his hands through his hair, struggling to come to terms with what had just happened. He wanted to believe it was all a dream, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion, but deep down, he knew it wasn't. It was real. The alien, standing across from him, watched him quietly. Its eyes, those deep, glowing eyes, never left his. They felt almost too human, too aware. David felt a chill run down his spine, but he also couldn't shake the strange pull it had on him. It was like there was something magnetic about it, something that made him feel like he was connected to it in a way he couldn't explain. "Why did you come to me?" David asked, his voice shaky. He was still trying to wrap his mind around the fact that the creature was not just an alien, but one who could speak perfect English. He had so many questions, but none of them seemed to make sense. The alien didn't respond at first. It simply stood there, its eyes focused on him with an intensity that made him uneasy. Then, finally, it spoke again, its voice softer this time, almost as if it were hesitant. "Because you were the only one who could help," it said, its words measured and slow. "I've been watching you." David felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "Watching me? For how long?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The alien didn't answer right away. Instead, it seemed to ponder his question, as though carefully considering the right words. "Since the day I arrived," it said simply. David's brow furrowed. "But how? I didn't even know you existed until yesterday." "I know," the alien replied, its voice tinged with something David couldn't quite place. Regret? Sadness? "I had to wait. I had to make sure it was safe. That you would be willing to trust me." David swallowed hard. "Trust you? Why should I trust you? I've only known you for a day, and you're telling me you've been watching me." The alien stepped closer, closing the distance between them. David instinctively recoiled, his heart racing, but the creature didn't seem threatening. It didn't feel like it was going to hurt him. Instead, it reached out with its hand, an alien hand almost delicate, with skin that shimmered faintly. "Because," the alien continued, its voice softer now, almost pleading, "I am not the enemy. My people are coming for me. They'll destroy everything here if they find me, but I don't belong with them anymore." Not after everything I've seen. David's mind raced. Destroy everything here? What was this alien talking about? Who were his people? And why had it come to Earth, of all places? The more David heard, the more questions piled up, and yet, the more he felt he was falling deeper into something he didn't understand. I don't know what you expect from me, David said, standing up and pacing the small living room. I'm just a regular guy. I don't have the answers. I don't even know how to help you. I'm not a hero or a soldier. I don't know how to fight off aliens or whatever it is you're talking about. The alien watched him closely, its eyes never leaving him, as though it was studying every movement, every emotion. You don't have to fight, it said, almost too calmly. You just have to help me leave. Leave? David asked, turning to face it, a sense of panic creeping into his chest. Leave where? You mean leave Earth? The alien nodded slowly, its movements graceful, almost predatory, but not in a threatening way. Yes, it said softly. I can't stay here any longer. My presence is dangerous. But I can't go back to my planet, not like this. David stopped pacing, a heavy feeling in his chest. What do you mean, not like this? Are you saying you're wanted by your people? Are they going to come looking for you? The alien didn't respond immediately, but the weight of its silence spoke volumes. It didn't need to say more for David to understand. The situation was far worse than he'd imagined. This wasn't just about an alien stranded on Earth. This was about a conflict that could threaten everything. Suddenly, the creature's face softened. I don't want to bring harm to you or your world. That's why I've stayed hidden for so long. But now I need your help. I need you to help me escape. David was torn. On one hand, he didn't know how to help the alien. He barely knew anything about it, and the idea of being involved in something so dangerous frightened him. But on the other hand, there was something about the alien's voice, something in the way it spoke, in the way it looked at him, that made him feel like he couldn't turn away. He let out a slow breath, running his hands through his hair. I don't know what to do. I can't be involved in something like this. But the alien's eyes softened, and it stepped closer, its voice now gentle. I'm not asking you to fight. Just trust me. Trust that I'm not your enemy. I just need your help. And in return, I will help you. I can show you things you've never imagined. David felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of things? What was this alien offering him? For a moment, everything was silent. David stood there, staring at the creature in front of him. He wanted to say no. He wanted to run away and forget this ever happened. But deep inside, a part of him knew that running away wasn't an option anymore. This was the beginning of something big, something he could never have predicted. And whether he liked it or not, David knew that the alien's request would change everything. The truth unveiled. David's heart raced, his mind spinning with thoughts he couldn't quite catch. The words, I need your help, echoed in his ears, a constant reminder of the impossible situation he found himself in. His whole life had been about following simple routines, working hard, and mindlessly getting through the days. But now, standing in his own living room, face to face with an alien, everything he thought he knew about the world seemed to be crumbling. The alien, standing so close now, exuded a quiet intensity. Her form shimmered faintly in the light, her skin a soft iridescent hue. The way she stood, her posture graceful and poised, made her seem almost ethereal. But the longer David looked at her, the more human she seemed. Her expression was one of calm determination, but David could sense the fear hiding just beneath the surface. It wasn't just about survival anymore. There was something deeper, something personal. David took a shaky breath, trying to gather his thoughts. I don't understand, he muttered, more to himself than to her. Why me? Why did you come to me of all people? Her eyes softened, and she took another step forward, closer than ever before. Because, she said quietly, Not just anyone. You've shown kindness, even without knowing it. Your heart. It's something different. Something rare. I felt it the moment I saw you. David stared at her, his chest tightening. He didn't know how to respond to that. He wasn't some special hero. He was just a regular guy. He had always tried to live a simple, quiet life. But standing there with this alien, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of responsibility. Something pulling him toward her. Double quotes, you. You're the only one who can help me, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been hiding for so long, running from those who would do anything to see me dead. But I can't hide anymore. The truth has to come out. David blinked. What do you mean? What truth? His mind was racing now, but everything felt like it was moving too fast. Slipping through his fingers, she hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. Finally she spoke, her voice trembling slightly. My name is Alira, she said, her eyes locking with his. I come from a planet far from here. My people are not like humans. We were once peaceful, but we've changed. My kind has become something monstrous. We've been to war, and we've lost our way. David felt a chill as the weight of her words sank in. War? He echoed, feeling a shiver run down his spine. What do you mean, you've lost your way? Alira's gaze dropped for a moment, her expression darkening. When I left my home, I was fleeing a war that's destroyed everything we once held dear. I wanted to escape the violence, to find peace. But there's no peace for us now. The war followed me here. David felt a wave of confusion crash over him. You mean you're not here by accident? He felt the urge to step back, but he was rooted to the spot, unable to look away from Alira. She nodded solemnly. No, I was sent to Earth on a mission to hide and survive. But the truth is, there are others, my enemies, who have followed me. They've tracked me here. David's breath caught in his throat. Your enemies? He took a step closer, his voice shaky. You mean there are more of you here? More aliens? Alira didn't answer immediately, her eyes narrowing slightly as if weighing her next words. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she spoke again. There are others, but they are not like me. I am not the monster you think I am. She paused, her voice soft but firm. I had to come here. I had to find someone like you, someone with a heart strong enough to understand. If my enemies find me, they will destroy everything. David felt a sudden sense of urgency, something he had never felt before. This wasn't just about helping an alien anymore. This was bigger than him, bigger than anything he had ever known. What do you want me to do? David asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alira's gaze softened. And for the first time, she stepped forward, closing the distance between them. I need you to trust me, she said quietly. I need you to help me stop them. Together we can make a stand. I can't do this alone, but with you. We have a chance. David's heart raced in his chest, his thoughts swirling. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. But there was something about Alira, something in the way she looked at him, that made him feel like he couldn't turn away. There was more to this, more than he could understand. He had never believed in destiny or fate. But standing here with her, he couldn't help but feel like this was something he was meant to do. All right, he said, his voice steady despite the chaos inside him. I'll help you, but you have to promise me something. Alira tilted her head slightly, curious. What? You have to promise me that you'll tell me everything. No more secrets, he said, looking into her eyes. I don't know what I'm getting into, but I need to understand it all. Alira nodded slowly. I promise, she said softly. I'll tell you everything. David took a deep breath, his nerves suddenly gone. There was no going back now. He didn't know what kind of trouble he was walking into, but one thing was clear. This was only the beginning. The alien's dilemma. David stood still, his mind racing. The weight of Alira's words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Stop them. That was all she had asked, but what did that even mean? Stop a war? Stop a force he didn't understand? The reality of the situation was beginning to sink in. This wasn't just some lost pet anymore. This was a fight for survival, her survival, and possibly his own. Alira stood a few feet away, her body language tense, but her eyes were full of vulnerability. The moment the words "help me" had left her lips, they had become more than just a plea. They had become a silent promise, a trust she was placing in him. The weight of that promise was overwhelming, and David felt the cold grip of responsibility take hold of him. "I don't know what you want me to do," David said, his voice wavering slightly. "I'm just a guy. I don't have any special skills. I'm not trained for this." He gestured around the room, half expecting her to reveal some grand weapon or power. But all she had was the calm assurance that he could help her. That wasn't enough. Alira looked at him for a long moment, her eyes full of something David couldn't identify. "You don't need to be trained," she said softly. "You just need to trust in yourself. Trust that you can help me." David's frustration boiled over. "Trust in myself? How am I supposed to do that when I don't even understand what's going on? You're an alien, Alira. You're asking me to fight off other aliens. This is insane." The words felt harsh as they left his mouth, but they were the truth. He was completely out of his depth. He didn't know the first thing about war, or about stopping whatever enemy had come after Alira. He wasn't some soldier. He was just a guy with a boring job and a pretty normal life. Alira stepped closer, her voice almost pleading. "I understand your fear, but this is more than just about me. It's about Earth, too." David felt a sudden tightness in his chest. Earth. He hadn't thought of it that way before. But if Alira's enemies were as dangerous as she made them sound, what would happen if they found her? Would Earth be caught in the crossfire? Would the entire planet be at risk? "There's nothing special about me," David said softly, more to himself than to her. He was still processing the enormity of what she was asking. I'm not a hero, Alira. I don't know how to stop a war. I can't even fight." Alira's eyes softened, and for the first time David saw the weight she carried, the loneliness, the fear of being hunted, the hopelessness of being stuck on a strange world. "You're more than you think, David," she said quietly. "You might not be a soldier, but you have something the others don't. You have a heart that is capable of compassion, of courage." David looked at her, shaking his head in disbelief. "A heart? You're talking like I'm supposed to be some kind of chosen one. I'm not. I'm just a guy who got caught up in this mess." Alira took another step forward, her presence almost magnetic. "No, David, you are something special. And whether you see it or not, you've already helped me. You've shown me that not all humans are like my enemies. That's why I trust you, because I believe that you will do what's right." David couldn't tear his gaze away from her. Her words weren't just comforting, they were convincing too. There was a part of him, deep down, that wanted to believe her. He had never thought of himself as anyone special, but here she was, telling him that he could make a difference. "Why did they chase you? Why did your people?" He stopped himself, realizing that he didn't even know who or what her enemies truly were. "Why did you leave them?" Alira's face hardened for a moment, and she looked away, as if wrestling with something painful. "I left because I couldn't stand what they had become. They had lost their way, David. They became ruthless, power-hungry. They stopped caring about their own people, and they started destroying everything around them to get what they wanted. I couldn't be a part of that. I wanted to escape, to find peace." Her voice grew quieter, and David could hear the pain behind her words. "But now, they're coming for me. They won't stop until they have me back. They need me for their plans for something much worse than a war." David's stomach twisted at the weight of her words. He had thought Alira was just some lost alien, stranded here. But the truth was far darker, and now he was tied to it, whether he liked it or not. "They need you for something worse?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alira nodded, her gaze hardening. "Yes, they've discovered how to harness energy ... and not just any energy. Power that can destroy entire planets. If they find me, they'll use my knowledge to fuel their war machine, and nothing will be able to stop them." David felt the chill of fear seep into his bones. What happens if they find you? What do they plan to do with this power? "I don't know exactly," Alira admitted, her voice heavy with regret. "But I know it won't be good for your world. I came here to escape, but I never imagined they would track me this far." David stood still, trying to absorb the enormity of the situation. His life had been a routine: work, eat, sleep. Now he was tangled in something that could affect the fate of an entire planet. Alira was right. It wasn't just about her anymore. If these enemies found her, Earth was in danger. And he had already crossed the line by agreeing to help her. "I don't know what I can do," David whispered, feeling the weight of her eyes on him. "But I can't turn back now. You're not alone in this anymore." Alira's gaze softened, and she nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely audible. "Together we might just have a chance." David knew there was no going back. His world, his quiet life, had just been turned upside down. But in the midst of the chaos, one thing was clear. He was no longer just a bystander. He was part of something much bigger, and no matter how scared he wasn't going to run away from it. The arrival of the others, the night was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that felt too heavy, too still. David sat on the couch, his mind racing with everything he had learned about Alira and the danger she was in. He hadn't known what to expect when he first agreed to help her, but now as the reality of their situation settled in, he realized that his world had just changed forever. The alien world, the threat of war, the enemies hunting her, it was all real, and now it was real for him too. Alira sat across from him, her eyes closed as if she were concentrating on something. The tension between them was palpable, each of them caught in their own thoughts. David had never felt so out of place in his own apartment, as though he no longer belonged here, in his safe, quiet life. "Do you think they've found us yet?" David asked quietly, breaking the silence. Alira's eyes fluttered open, and she met his gaze with a serious expression. "They're closer than you think," she said softly. "I've been hiding from them for too long. They're relentless." David swallowed, his chest tightening. He had known it was only a matter of time before her enemies arrived, but hearing her say it aloud made the threat feel much more immediate. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air, faint at first but growing louder, reverberating through the walls of the apartment. It was a sound David had never heard before, but it felt familiar, like the hum of something much larger and much more dangerous. "What is that?" David asked, his heart skipping a beat. He stood up, instinctively moving toward the window. Alira's face hardened, her expression tense with fear. "It's them," she said quietly. "They're here." David rushed to the window, his heart pounding in his chest. He peeked outside, half expecting to see nothing but the usual quiet streets. But what he saw made his blood run cold. In the distance just above the city skyline, he saw a series of lights, bright, pulsating, and unmistakably alien. They weren't stars. They weren't planes. They were ships, alien ships. David's mind raced. How did they find us so quickly? The ships were moving slowly but steadily, descending toward the city like a storm gathering on the horizon. There was no mistaking it now. Alira's enemies had arrived. "They've tracked me," Alira whispered from behind him, her voice filled with both fear and resignation. "They won't stop until they have me." David turned to her, panic rising in his chest. "What do we do now? They're right there. They're coming for you." Illyra stepped forward, her face set with determination. "We don't have much time. They'll land soon, and once they do, it's over. You need to get ready to run, David. We can't face them head-on. We need to escape." David nodded, but fear gripped his throat. Escape? Where will we go? How will we get away from that? He motioned toward the ships in the sky, which were now getting closer with each passing second. "I have a place," Illyra said quickly, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "It's a safe house, far from here. But we have to leave. Now before they find us." David hesitated for a moment, looking out the window again. The ships were nearly there, and the sight of them made his stomach churn. They looked massive, looming like dark shadows in the sky, casting an eerie glow on everything below. There was no way they could outrun them, no way they could hide. But as Illyra's eyes locked onto his, something shifted in him. He could see the fear in her, but also something else, something deeper. It was a sense of trust, of reliance. She needed him, and in that moment, David realized that he couldn't turn his back on her. "Not now." "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "Let's go. We'll escape together." Illyra nodded, her face softening with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "We'll make it, I promise." But just as David turned to grab his coat, a loud crash interrupted them. The sound was deafening, followed by the unmistakable screech of metal tearing through the air. The ground shook beneath their feet as if something massive had just landed right outside the building. "They're here," Illyra said, her voice low, almost a growl. "We have to move now." Without wasting another second, David grabbed his keys and rushed toward the door, Illyra following close behind. As they stepped into the hallway, the lights flickered, and the hum of the ships outside grew louder, vibrating through the walls. It felt like the world was closing in around them, the weight of their enemy's arrival pressing in on every side. The stairwell was empty, and David felt a surge of urgency pushing him forward. He glanced at Illyra, who was focused, her eyes scanning the hallway as though anticipating an attack at any moment. They had to get out now. They reached the parking lot, and David's breath caught in his throat as he saw the alien ships hovering above the city. The dark shadows of their massive forms filled the sky, and strange lights blinked in patterns, scanning the area below. "They've already begun searching for us," Illyra said, her voice a mix of fear and resolve. "We need to hurry. The longer we stay, the more dangerous it gets." David turned toward the car, his hands shaking as he fumbled with the keys. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't prepared for this. But as Illyra stood beside him, unwavering, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to leave her to face this. Alone, with one final glance at the ships above, David slid into the car, starting the engine. The chase had begun, and the road ahead was uncertain. But he would do whatever it took to help Illyra escape, and maybe, just maybe, to save the planet from the war that had already begun. A new beginning. David's hands gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white with tension. The hum of the alien ships grew louder as he drove faster, weaving through the empty streets, the eerie glow of the ships casting shadows across the city. Every second felt like a lifetime, the pounding of his heart in his ears, the uncertainty of what lay ahead threatening to consume him. Illyra sat beside him, her gaze fixed on the sky, her face tense with focus. She hadn't said much since they'd left the apartment, but the silence spoke volumes. She was scared, he could see it in her eyes. But there was something else too. A quiet strength. A determination to survive, not just for herself, but for him. For Earth. "We're almost there," Illyra whispered, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but there was an undercurrent of urgency. "Just a few more miles." David nodded, though the words didn't bring him much comfort. The alien ships were still following, their lights flashing in the distance like predatory eyes. He didn't know how much longer they could outrun them, or if the safe house Illyra had spoken Ulf was truly safe, but there was no turning back now. He had made his choice. He had to see this through. "Do you think we can make it?" David asked, his voice thick with worry. He didn't want to admit it, but fear gnawed at him. The closer they got to the safe house, the more he realized how little he actually knew about the situation they were in. The unknown hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "We'll make it," Alira said firmly, her voice unwavering. "I trust you, David. You've already helped me more than you know. We've come too far to stop now." Her words, though simple, carried a weight David couldn't ignore. She believed in him. And that belief, that trust, gave him the strength to keep driving, to keep pushing forward, despite the uncertainty. For the first time since he had met Alira, David realized that he wasn't just helping her escape. He was fighting for something bigger than himself, something that could change everything. The safe house wasn't just a refuge from the alien hunters. It was their last hope, the last place where they could stand a chance against what was coming. But the closer they got, the more David realized how fragile that hope really was. He wasn't just saving an alien anymore. He was protecting a future that was uncertain, dangerous, and yet filled with the possibility of something extraordinary. They reached the outskirts of the city, and David turned onto a narrow, secluded road. The landscape grew darker, more desolate, the faint glow of the city lights fading behind them. He didn't know what to expect when they arrived, but the tension in the air was palpable, as though something huge was about to unfold. He couldn't help but wonder if he had made the right decision. "I know you're scared," Alira said suddenly, as if reading his mind. "But you've done more than just drive me here. You've given me something that I thought I had lost hope." David glanced at her, surprised by her words. Hope? What did he have to offer but confusion and fear? But as he looked at her, her eyes shining in the dim light, he realized that she was right. In a world where everything seemed uncertain, where enemies were closing in and danger lurked around every corner, their connection, however strange it might seem, was the one constant that gave him strength. It was something more powerful than fear. Something that transcended species, boundaries, and differences. "I don't know what comes next," David admitted, his voice quieter now, "but I'm not going to run away from this anymore. Whatever happens, I'm with you." Alira smiled softly, a look of gratitude and relief washing over her face. "That's all I need from you," she said, her voice calm, almost serene. "We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for a chance to create something new, something better, together." David's heart swelled at her words. He had always believed in the possibility of change, in the power of people coming together to make a difference. But this was something completely different. This was a fight for the future of not just Earth, but every world that had ever dreamed of peace. As they neared the safe house, a sudden flash of light lit up the sky behind them. The ships had found them. They were getting closer, and the hum of their engines was now deafening. David's stomach tightened as he floored the accelerator, his eyes scanning the road ahead, searching for the refuge Alira had promised. Suddenly, Alira reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Look," she said, her voice filled with urgency. David turned his gaze to the horizon, and his breath caught in his throat. In the distance, the safe house was finally visible, a small, isolated structure surrounded by dense trees and thick shadows. It wasn't much, but it was their last chance. David's hands gripped the wheel tighter as they raced toward the safe house, the sound of the alien ships growing louder by the second. The tension was unbearable, each moment stretching into eternity. As they approached the house, a loud bang echoed through the air, followed by a sharp, bright flash. The ships had fired. David didn't look back. There was no time. They had to make it. With one last surge of speed, they pulled into the driveway of the safe house. The door to the small building swung open, and Alira quickly directed him to Park. As soon as the car came to a stop, they both rushed out. the hum of the alien ship still echoing in the background. Alira grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the entrance. "We're here," she said, her voice filled with relief, though she didn't let her guard down. "Now we fight. Together." David nodded, his heart racing as he followed her inside. The doors slammed shut behind them, the heavy silence that followed both comforting and terrifying. The fight for their future had just begun.